Everybody, video here for you today. Ancient history news. Like to do these at least once every 10 days or so. It's been about that long, so why don't we discuss 5 ancient history news stories that have been in the news in recent days. First one, Portugal, right down here. This is an ancient cave site. It's located right up here in these hills right here. Here's a story that came out last week. I will leave all these links below. Discovery of ancient stone tool rewrites early human history. Study takes a look at the Iberian Peninsula some 40,000 years ago. It says a study reveals that humans occupied present-day Portugal some 5,000 years ahead of the timeline researchers had previously established. And isn't that the way it goes all over the world, kind of, in this new day and age of research? It says the chronology is based on the surprise discovery of stone tools used by modern humans in a cave near the Atlantic Ocean. The cave called Lapa do Passario, and I have no clue whatsoever if I pronounce that right. It says it contains stone tools used for hunting and cooking, similar to those discovered at other sites across Eurasia. Here's a look at some of the stone tools, some of these going back over 40,000 years. Here's another look inside the cave, but human history here going back over 40,000 years. It says a new study identifies human artifacts in central Portugal dating back between 41,000 and 38,000 years ago. That suggests several things. Humans were likely present in the region much earlier than previously understood. Neanderthal populations would have been more sparse than researchers thought. Modern humans spread rapidly into southern Europe. Humans and Neanderthals did not have a natural border between them. The findings were published on Monday in the Journal of Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, and here's a pic from that cave right here in Portugal. Here's another look inside of this cave here, but they're trying to figure out what was going on 40,000 years ago. They say environmental changes, cold and dry periods led to people living in here. Well, we've talked a lot about ancient caves on this channel. Darren Kuyu, other places, just made a video in China about an ancient cave. Just a lot we don't know about our past. We have a tough time figuring out what went on in places like Egypt just 5,000 years ago. Well, here people are trying to figure out what was going on 40,000 years ago. Must be pretty interesting work. Let's move on. Next story, let's go down to Egypt. A lot of news has come out of Saqqara recently. I know a few other channels have covered this, but more stuff being found under the sands here. Here is Saqqara right down here. Giza right up here. This is just south of Abu Sir, just north of Dashur. One of the most famous necropolis areas on the west side of the Nile. Land of the Dead. These discoveries go back about 2,500 years. Now, I covered some finds that were made a few weeks ago in Saqqara. Here it says Egypt opens ancient mummy sarcophagus sealed 2,500 years ago. This is a brand new story here. But up to 59 sealed coffins have been found in Saqqara. Here is a video attached. I will leave this link below, but pretty cool finds, not super ancient, but coming from 2,500 years ago. This is when the Greeks moved in and they kind of changed the history, but when they conquered Egypt, they did not make Egypt a Greek place. They became Egyptians themselves. Here's a pic from the site. It says Khalid El Al-Nabi, Minister of Tourism and Antiquities, right, and Mustafa Waziri, the Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, left, react after opening the sarcophagus. It is around 2,500 years old at the Saqqara archaeological site south of Cairo. Saturday, October 3, this pic comes from. Here's another pic coming from the site here. Saqqara is about 30 kilometers south of Giza, the Great Pyramids, about 19 miles. These are not rulers' coffins, but they are pretty important people. Seems they have maybe some afterlife scenes on here. Wings. The face is always portrayed in some way or the other. It carries the soul into the afterlife. The image of the person. Images were super important to people 2,000 years ago, roughly. This is coming from 2,500 years ago. But the image of the face, of the soul going forward, very important. There was also this 14-inch bronze statue found. Pretty cool. The god Nefertum. He kind of evolved to be the son of the god Ptah, one of the most important gods coming from Egypt, but he kind of springs from the primeval waters here. Lotus flower, It's all about water and those creation stories. Here's a look at some of these coffins here, all laid out. Very rich imagery on here. Also, scarab beetle right there. A lot of the sun's journeys are displayed on these, but these were found pretty deep down, pretty well hidden. I would just hope that the Antiquities Council takes the time to explore places like Hawara, where that ancient labyrinth was reported to be, get down to some much deeper points in history, or are they even willing to do that? Well, I'm just not sure. Next story, let's go down to Siberia here. This is called the Vengerovsky district. It's located right down here. This story just came out a few hours ago. Discovery going back about 5,000 years right down here. The story just came out on Archaeology's website here. Here is the original story. Stunning Bronze Age statuette with a tattooed face and a bone mask found in Siberia here. Here is how this statuette was found. Here is a better look at it, but this certainly was important if it was found with a 5,000-year-old burial. Had some significance here. It says this is without a doubt the find of the season. And it says here this is about the size of a palm. It says the woman must have been an unusual person to have such a figurine escorting her to the afterlife. That's what I've learned over 8-9 years making videos. Ancient cultures put a very high importance on the afterlife, that is for sure. It says this artifact is made out of a horse vertebrae. That's what it says. It says there's a mask in the form of a bear's face that goes over that human face. Don't really see that in any of these pics. But here is the woman coming from 5,000 years ago with this artifact buried right next to her. Held some certain significance, that is for sure. Looks like there was some other stone artifacts found with the burial, along with that little statuette. It said the little statuette had a stripe going along its face, which symbolized a tattoo. It was placed on its tummy and then had its head broken off and turned upside down so that it looked up in a ritual unseen to archaeologists. There was a deepening in the middle of the clay statuette, which had a bronze plate and also some organic substance inside of it. Further chemical tests are needed to establish what exactly was placed inside of that deepening. The bone mask made of a horse vertebrae that covered the statuette's head depicted a bear's muzzle, archaeologists believe. Don't really have a good shot of that, but here's the burial, 5,000 years old. Seems people all over the world 5,000 years ago, and time even going way back before that, had afterlife rituals seen in many parts of the world. Pretty cool story. Let's move on. Next story, a short one here. Norway. Talk about a discovery that goes back to the Neolithic period. This is Yorkvik, something like that, right down on the southern coast here. Here's the site today, right on the coast. Now, I grew up in Minnesota, grew up fishing, so I'm always interested how ancient people caught fish. Mentioned it a lot in my Ancient America series. Living out here in the desert, well, doesn't give you too many opportunities to go fishing, but I do get a little fix of fishing back home in Minnesota from one channel I'll mention real quick here. Here's a channel I found about 3-4 months ago, Nattie Up North. She has 116,000 subs, just makes great videos. Heck of a fisherman. I enjoy watching her videos from Minnesota. I will leave a link for her channel below. Actually living here in the desert, it's just nice to see open water. But here is Archaeology. This is a story that just came out in recent times here. A fish hook, maybe going back over 5,000 years, found here. It says measuring as much as 6.5 feet long and weighing 550 pounds, a size achieved by consuming plentiful ocean buffet of squid, eels, crustaceans, and smaller fish. The shimmering Atlantic bluefin tuna is one of the largest, strongest, and fastest fish in the sea, and one of the most prized catches. To land such a fish 5,000 years ago required quite a big hook. They think line could have been made with seaweed or tree bark or some other source. It says Nielsen and his team have found great quantities of tuna bones in a mud layer 4 feet below the marsh's surface that represents a prehistoric seabed. Here's Science Norway. This story came out a little earlier this summer. Here's some ancient fishing implements made as much as 5,000 years ago. It says archaeologists have found astonishingly well-preserved gear from a fisherman who lived 5,000 years ago. Stone Age harpoons found in southern Norway speak of perilous fishing But now the traces from this time are slowly crumbling away. There you go, right there, look. Here is where some of these finds were made. It says a lot of things that normally don't belong in a farmer's field have turned up in this field at the Norway site. Here's a look where they're doing some archaeological work here. But some fishing implements found in a mud layer deep down, going way back in time. Here's something else found at the site. And here's some ancient fishing hooks. Still pretty well preserved. I do miss fishing a little bit. This story just caught my eye. It says bones lie tightly packed in clay in a bone layer about 125 centimeters below the surface. But you can kind of see a fish hook right there, some other things. Pretty interesting story. Let's move on. Fifth and final story, let's go down to Tibet. I found this story a little while ago. This is a subject I'm going to get more into with some upcoming videos, but let's go to report done on some very ancient things in this part of the world here. Now, I've talked about cannabis in my Ancient America series. I've talked about shamans in Mesoamerica and other parts of the world, mind exploration, and just using hemp, just common sense. Seems people have been using it for thousands of years, and we were like the first culture to make it something bad. It says cannabis sativa, the plant that produces marijuana and its non-psychoactive cousin hemp, has been used by humans for more than 25,000 years. It says it's hemp paleo. Some paleo purists have argued no. However, history suggests that ancient human ancestors, the Denisovans, living 160,000 years ago on the Tibetan plateau, may have been the first to discover the benefits of cannabis sativa, plant for food, fiber, and medicine, long before the advent of civilization and agriculture. And I'm going to have more on this subject coming from some pretty famous parts of the ancient world. Once again, I will leave all these links below if you want to check this out. Pretty interesting article. It says big news about hemp today is the growing popularity of CBD, or cannabinoidal, found primarily in flowers of the hemp plant, a non-intoxicating compound. CBD is one of over 100 cannabinoid compounds that have been identified in cannabis. First discovered in 1940, CBD has shown to have promising beneficial effects in helping chronic pain, inflammation, neurological conditions, PTSD, sleep, anxiety, and many other things, including Alzheimer's, cancer, other things. It's kind of a miracle drug. We are rediscovering what the ancients always knew. That's what I believe. I just thought this was an interesting story. The Denisovans here might have been using this plant up to 160,000 years ago. What do we really know about our past? Well, not much. But one thing is for sure, everything we need to cure ourselves, well, I think it grew out of the ground at one point in time. Those are 5 ancient history news stories coming from the relative recent past. Hope you thought that was interesting. You all have. Very nice day.